Hi, I'm Shane, and in this video I'm going to be doing a graphite drawing. It's a little bit of a departure from the way I normally make art. I did draw with graphite a lot many years ago, but over the past 10 years or so I've been working almost exclusively digitally, so drawing like that is similar, I guess, but not quite. I mean, if you're working in Clip Studio or Photoshop, you can always just work in layers, move stuff around, delete something you don't like. Making a graphite drawing, you have to put a little bit more forethought into it, so you're not erasing so much. Erasing's not great for the paper because it breaks down the surface of the paper, and it doesn't look quite the same next to parts of the paper that haven't been erased. So there's a little bit more planning involved. Over the past several years, I have gotten kind of loose in the way I do things, just because I can move stuff around. I don't really put too much thought into the image ahead of time. I just kind of play around and find what works. And with painting, everything's easy to fix because you can just paint over whatever you've painted. I did a couple of quick drawings of different items that I was going to be putting in the drawing. And I also kind of planned out the space, the composition of the drawing a little bit more. I have to go over and look in the storage and dig around and see if I can find some paper from back in my college days. If I do find some paper like that, it's probably going to be about 30 years old. Okay, I found this tube. It says paper on it, and it's got paper in it, but you can see there's been some dirt daubers in there, but it's got a lot of drawing paper all rolled up together. I'm going to look through these old rolled up sheets of paper, figure out which one I want to draw on, and then since they've been rolled up for all this time, I'll have to tape them down so that they're flat. But so now I just need to find my glasses, and sometimes my glasses are on my head, but they're not this time. With this drawing, I'll be using a few pieces of reference material. I like to go for walks, and I'm always taking pictures of things I find interesting, usually stuff in nature. I'll be using these particular photos that I took. I'll also be using a couple of pieces of wood I found. I think they're really interesting. They kind of remind me of old tree stumps. The main subject for the drawing will be a coyote. I do have a couple of photos I took of coyotes near my house, but both are kind of far away. This one was eating my neighbor's dead cow. I had seen a whole pack of them feeding on the cow carcass, and I have a picture of that too, but I won't show that. I'm not sure how the cow died. I don't know if the coyotes killed it or if they merely found it that way. So to get a decent coyote photo reference, I traveled back in time to the internet of the 1970s. When I was a kid, World Book Encyclopedia was a big part of my life. There was a long stretch when my family didn't have a television, and I'd spend a lot of time reading and looking at pictures in the encyclopedias. Unfortunately, World Book let me down this time with their coyote entry. Just this one tiny picture. So I moved on to another book set that I loved as a kid, Illustrated Encyclopedia of the Animal Kingdom. I decided to draw a coyote because my wife suggested it a few days ago. We live in a rural farming area, and we like to sit out on our front porch in the evenings and talk and listen to the sounds of nature going on around us in the dark. There's owls and frogs, crickets, but also coyotes. And the coyotes can get pretty vocal at night. We rarely ever hear just one howl, but rather a whole chorus of howls and yipping and snarling and whining. It's really an eerie sound. A few weeks ago, I was up before sunrise, as I usually am. I was sitting in the dark on my front porch, having some coffee, and the coyote started up nearby. And I was able to record a video. I posted it here on my channel, but I took it down because it didn't really go along with the other videos. But I'd like to play a brief clip of that audio right now. Thankfully, I did eventually find my glasses. I had to retrace my steps. I seem to have to retrace my steps more and more often these days because I absent-mindedly will set things down and forget where. I've already lost a pair of glasses this year. They fell out of my shirt pocket when I was picking wild blackberries, and they're still out there somewhere in the weeds. Hopefully I'll come across them again. I don't really need glasses to do a lot of things, but I do need them to read and to draw. And I used to have perfect eyesight, but when I was in my mid-40s, it started to decline. I'm 53 now. My eyes aren't what they used to be. My hands aren't as steady as they used to be. A couple of days ago, a friend of mine from college shared a picture with me of a drawing he made, and he talked about the tremors in his hands. And I have that too, to a lesser degree. When I draw, I can't make the long, beautiful, elegant lines that I used to make. My lines tend to have a squiggle, even when I draw with the motion of my arm rather than my wrist. It's really frustrating. To compensate, I started drawing more with shorter, jerky lines. I really don't like it, but it is what it is. I told my friend I should have knocked out all my detailed drawings back when I was younger and my eyes and my hand control were optimum.
What are you doing?
I'm drawing fur.
Well, you don't have to draw each individual hair. Just use your darks and lights to suggest it.
I'm not drawing the individual hairs. I'm drawing tufts of fur. Tufts.
Oh, you're a tough guy, huh?
It's taken me a while to realize this, but when it comes to my creative endeavors, I tend to want to focus on just one thing at a time, which is a little problematic since I have so many things that interest me. I spend months or years painting and drawing, or then I'll decide I want to write for a while until I get tired or burn out on that, and then I'll switch to some other creative outlet. Sometimes, too, I'll have an art job or be in an art-related field working for someone else, and I feel like I use up all my creative energy on that and lose a desire to work on my own stuff. I've had some success over the years in the visual arts and in writing, but I've never been hugely successful at any of it. And I suppose if I had focused on one thing to the exclusion of everything else, I would have not only seen better financial success, but I would have been more successful in developing my skills in that particular thing. Skills come through practice. When I switched to a different creative interest, I paused that skill development on that other thing. Now, even though I know all of this is true, I just can't help but want to try out something new and different for a while. And really, the development of that skill is just paused. Whenever I come back to it later, I can usually pick up right where I left off after a few days of working out the kinks. So this drawing is an example of that. With the exception of a couple of sketchbook drawings, this is the first time I've done any real drawing with a pencil on paper in many, many years. Naturally, I've continued drawing on a computer tablet, but it's not quite the same. This tree I'm drawing is on my property, and we have a lot of mature oak trees. I think this one might be the oldest we have. I found a website that had a formula to estimate the age of a tree based on what kind it is and its circumference. I don't know how accurate it is, but if it is, then that tree is between 180 and 190 years old. I know there are many old and ancient trees in the world, and this one can't compare with those in age, but I still like to think about all it might have seen in its long life. It was already 20 years old during the U.S. Civil War. It existed before the railroad came to this area. The parent of this tree could have witnessed wild bison and Chickasaw hunting parties. Sometimes I like to imagine standing in that same spot and going back in time to when it was just a seedling. I gradually stopped working on paper back in the mid-90s. I went the gallery route with my art, and framing my works on paper just got to be kind of expensive for me back then. I switched over to drawing and painting on gessoed panels. And with wood or masonite panels, I didn't need frames. I could build or affix a hanging method on the back of them and cut out that extra cost. But even better, the panels could take a lot more abuse, and mistakes were easy to fix. I could erase with no problem or just paint over certain areas. I could use sandpaper on them. I found them to be a much more affordable and durable option over paper and canvas. I suppose the only drawback is they take up a little more space, and that can make storing them an issue. I wasn't really happy with the way the frog turned out. I wasn't too accurate with it, but I'll live with it. Obviously, I drew the tiny tree frog much bigger than it is in nature. And when I use something as a reference, I don't ever feel like I have to keep it to scale. I'll combine several different elements and size them however I want. You're always going to have a more realistic look to the subject of your art if you look at it. But you don't have to keep it exactly as you see it. For example, maybe you want to draw a sci-fi scene. So you could just grab some everyday objects for basic shapes and then turn them into something otherworldly. It's like your vacuum cleaner could be reworked in a drawing to be a starship. A pebble from your driveway could be an asteroid. You could make a golf ball into a moon. I do draw and paint out of my head a lot, just from pure imagination, but I also look at objects and photos as reference quite a bit. This drawing is not the first version of this that I have made. 2 days before, I started another version, didn't put a whole lot of thought into it, and it kind of went sideways on me. I think the drawing is salvageable, and I will do something with it, and I'll probably make a video of me doing something with that drawing. Well, that's all for this video. I really appreciate you watching, and thank you to all who have subscribed.